We changed our minds. Those are the words received by one of my firm's clients that were marketing for sale. Look, it's not entirely out of the question for a buyer to back out of a merger and acquisition transaction. However, what is surprising is that these words were uttered literally within days of the buyer submitting a formal letter of intent to acquire the client's business. Usually, if a buyer is going to back out, it's based on information from the seller that gives the buyer pause and concern. It could be concern about customer retention, about job pricing, about capabilities, about employees. There's usually something from the seller's disclosure that the buyer has trouble digesting, and that could result in the buyer saying, "We're backing out." This was different. This was within days of the letter of intent being signed. So, why would that happen? I believe that it had to do with something on the buyer side of the equation changing, either something in their business or something personally. And look, things do change. It's understandable, and we appreciate the clarity that the buyer gave, and they did not procrastinate and drag things out. They made their decision, they uttered those words, and okay, we move on to the next candidate. At least this was not a situation where the buyer backed out late in the M&A process. That would be much more damaging to the seller client is if there already had been announcements to customers, employees, or suppliers. Thankfully, that was not the case here. So it's an interesting development. It's a lesson learned that sometimes things will change on the buyer side. And from our vantage point, we'll find another buyer and we'll get this transaction closed.